Namo Buddhaya. I'm very happy today since we have Venerable Ajahn Jayasaro, a forest tradition monk from Thailand. He is a very, very senior monk of Ajahn Chah forest tradition of Thailand. And to tell about him, in just to give you a brief, he's actually born in the UK, but interestingly, when he was like in his young age, he felt some connection with India. And when he was 16, 17 years of age, he came down to India and he roamed across India. And then he also found about many Buddhist persons here, Buddhist places, and overall culture of India had always attracted him. Later on, in his quest of his life, he went to Thailand when he heard about this forest tradition in Thailand for the Buddhist monks. And then he was ordained in Thailand. And now he also is one of the most respected monks throughout the world. But he was also abbot of Wat Pha Nanachat, one of the great monasteries, forest tradition monasteries of Thailand. In his life, actually, few things which I would like to mention here is he, as I said, he loves India because of Buddha is from India, so that is one main reason. He also, when I met Ajahn Jayasaro, so he also told us about how he traveled from Bodh Gaya to Rajgir, because that was the path which was taken by Lord Buddha, and he experienced the whole India, the Bihar part of it during that time. He shared those experiences, and now on his this tour of Maharashtra, he is in Maharashtra from last Sunday, and he has given this 8 days for Maharashtra. So I personally feel very obliged for his kindness to give so much of a time. He is very, very busy, but still he took out so much of time to interact with the local people over here. So here today, when I heard some of his Dhamma talks, so he tells very interesting stories to explain, so that it could be explained to even to the lay persons and lay devotees. And we found that his engagement, even with the youths and young children, was amazing. In Akola, he gave a Dhamma talk to the kids of the to the school there, and they were very they liked it so much. He also gave in this journey. He also gave a talk near the petrol pump. So he said, Ajahn said that this is possibly the first of during all his life. This is possibly for the first gig in a gas station, and that gas station fortunately had that sign of pure for sure with the Buddha, with the Dhamma sign. So that was what a coincidence that we had. He also supports lot of activities throughout the world, and in Nagpur also he has visited some viharas over here, and he has also motivated various many monks, also motivated lot of upasakas to do some good work. So today I welcome Ajahn Jayasaro in the studio of Awaz India, and like as I said that he has been telling many interesting stories in this Dhamma talk sessions. So may I request Ajahn, do you have any interesting story to tell us which relates with Dhamma and overall life of a person and public as a whole?
Yes, let me just tell a short story that I've been telling over the past few days, and it concerns the foolish person who is searching around on the street in front of his house, and a friend comes over and says, what are you doing? So, I lost my keys. And he said, oh, I will help you. Where do you think you dropped them? And he said, "Oh, I dropped my keys in my garden." And he said, "Well, if you dropped the keys in the garden, why are you looking in the road under the lamp?" And he says, "Well, because it's much easier to search here. It's so much brighter. It's very dark in the garden and very difficult to find anything." So this is just a very short story, and of course, the moral of the story is that when we have some difficulties in our life, we tend to look for the solution outside of ourselves and look in things which are easy and convenient. Maybe someone is upset and they will drink alcohol or take some drugs or take some pills and look just for some short-term fix because it's easy. But the real problem lies within themselves, like actually drop the key to happiness and liberation in the garden, meaning in their own heart. So it's not that wherever it's easy to look that you will find what you are searching for. So this is a very short story to begin with. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Ajahn, for that short story. So we have some questions now from our audiences who are watching this live Dhamma talk by Venerable Ajahn Jayasaro. Venerable, this Sattva from Thane, Mumbai. So the question is, what is the importance of noble truth in today's modern world?
Well, the noble truths are an expression of timeless truths and the timeless truths of the human condition. And so they are always apt and always applicable because they are dealing with the causes of suffering that lie within us, which under three kind of big main headings or umbrellas, we can say, of greed, hatred, and delusion. And the greed, hatred, and delusion of people in India 2,500 years ago, yes, and of people today is not any different. Maybe the things that people desire and the things that stimulate people's greed are different today than they were in those days. The things that made people angry are different, but the greed itself, the anger itself, and the delusion themselves, these are the same. And so the Buddha analyzes the human condition. He says the root cause of human suffering is ignorance of the true nature of life and the world, and that human beings have the capacity to free themselves from suffering through the practice of this holistic system of education or training, which he called the Eightfold Path. So we are talking about an analysis of the timeless truths of the human condition. What creates suffering, what reduces suffering, what eliminates suffering, what creates happiness, what sustains happiness, what brings happiness to maturity. So for this reason, I would say that these teachings are always applicable.
Thank you very much, Ajahn. So Ajahn mentioned that importance of noble truth is timeless because it tells us, it trains us about how to achieve happiness and how to reduce down our miseries, our sorrows. Ajahn, there is another very interesting question. Bhavna is asking that is Buddhism a philosophy or a religion?
Yes, well, I think this is a question that that illustrates the influence and the power of the Western mind, and the Western, I think, quite a strong word to use is cultural imperialism. So we are accustomed to the idea of imperialism being governed by soldiers and military power, but the influence of Western ideas and concepts, ways of looking at life and looking at religion are things that have seeped into the way of thinking of people in Asia without them really realizing. So we say, well, what is a religion? And so the Western scholars, their understanding of religion is based upon the religions that grew up in the Middle East. There's a family of religions. So you have Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. So although these religions don't get on very well, in fact, they share some of the same books, the same texts, and they have the same basic idea of what a religion is. So religion is concerned faith in God or gods. And we can summarize these religions as belief systems. Okay, so when someone comes to Buddhism and they try to see Buddhism through Western eyes and say, well, this isn't a religion. And you say, well, why isn't it a religion? Because there doesn't seem to be a system of beliefs in God. So we could say, well, who are you to decide what a religion is? Why should we take your definition of religion as the universal definition? You know, it's just the Western people who've grown up in Christianity or Islam. They have their idea of what religion is, and so they say, oh, Buddhism is not a religion. It's sometimes people say it's philosophy. Some people say it's a way of life. I would say it's a different species of religion to the one that people in the West are familiar with. And rather than being essentially a belief system, it is fundamentally an education system. So I would say it's not necessarily a philosophy or a way of life. It is ultimately the supreme education system.
Oh, thank you so much, Bante. Ajahn mentioned about Buddhism being supreme education of oneself. So that I think should be very enlightening for all of us.
Let me just add a little bit to see the difference between these two species or two families of religion. So in the first family, the Middle Eastern family of religion, you say faith is the essential feature. So much so that these days the word religion and faith is used interchangeably. People will say sometimes Christian religion or Christian faith, Islamic religion, Islamic faith, and so on. So we can see how important faith is in this religion. And we can say the more faith you have, the better. In the education system, religion, we have a different role for faith. It's not at the center of this system. It is a tool to be used in the education. And we need to study and understand faith and what are its particular characteristics, what is its value, what are the dangers of it. And we have to know it, understand it thoroughly in order to be able to use it correctly. So you can see with faith, the essential feature or the value is it energizes.
Yes.
It gives you a lot of focus and energy. That's the value of it. The downside is without the critical faculty, without this wisdom governing it, it can very easily fall into either superstition or else fanaticism.
Oh.
So Buddhism says it's not that the more faith, the better, but faith should be balanced with intelligence and critical faculty and analysis so that we can derive the positive values, effects of faith without falling into the traps of superstition or fanaticism.
Thank you so much, Ajahn. That was quite a detailed answer. I think our viewers would be very happy to listen to that. Going further, this is Rohit Shahare. He is asking that it is said that Buddhism is based on science. So whether it is true, and if it is true, how do we develop scientific temper among masses?
Well, because of the prestige of science, we can see from the late 19th century in Sri Lanka, the Buddhist revival, that the Buddhist teachers would try to ally Buddhism with science and say Buddhism is scientific, to borrow the prestige of science. But for me, the problem here is that it makes Buddhism inferior to science, or Buddhism can only be accepted to the extent to which it is scientific. I don't agree with this. So I would say that they're in the search for truth. Science is the search for truth, which can be measured. So this is the characteristic of science, most science, and the limitation of science. Science can only give answers about things which can be measured. Now, the Dhamma, the Buddha's teaching, allow us to develop the tools to explore all the areas of life which cannot be measured. Okay, let me give you an example. Well, let me just point to the fact that in the scientific community, rather than humbly accepting there are limitations to science and the aspects of truth which are accessible to scientific method, the tendency has been to say that anything which cannot be proved by scientific method is superstition, yes, or it does not really exist. This is going too far. This is also an act of faith. So let me give you an example of the love you have for your mother. Can you prove that exists? You can say, well, I look after my mom, and well, you could be just playing a game. You could inside, you might, can you prove to show me? If you really love your mother, show me. How can you prove it?
So then I will just hug her. And
yeah, or anybody can hug. Yeah. I mean, an enemy can hug.
Yes, yes.
So if the scientist would say, but the love for mother doesn't really exist, you're just imagining it because you cannot show me the figures.
Yes.
Have you got a monitor you can put on your heart and you can say, yeah, it shoots up this high or this high? No. So obviously it's ridiculous to say that everything you cannot measure does not really exist. So Buddhism gives us the Buddhist method, or the Buddhist technology, or the Buddhist education system allows us to learn about and to explore all the areas of life which science cannot reach. But it is also accepting of science in those areas which are accessible to science. So we might say if science is like 2-dimension, then Dhamma is like the 3rd dimension. So the 3rd dimension does not negate the first 2 dimensions. It adds a depth and profundity.
Thank you very much, Ajahn. There is one very interesting question related to it. Science always talks about cause and effect. So Prafulli is asking, how does karma really works?
Okay, I don't think I fully answered the previous question about scientific method for the masses, but maybe we come back. So let's first of all look at, so karma is really cause and effect as it applies to human life or to life of living beings. And the teaching is that any act or physical act, verbal act, speech, or thought, which is accompanied by intention or volition or jetana, has a result, which is in harmony with the nature of the intention. So, an example that from daily life, very simple example. Let's say that you're at work with somebody whose behavior is not good, and you just be patient and be patient. You don't say anything, and then one day it's too much, and you get angry with them. You shout at them. Okay, but before you reach that level, there's quite some time. But then you notice that the likelihood of you getting angry a second time has now been much increased because you have a first time.
Yes.
Okay?
Yeah.
So the distance from never reacting to the first reaction is maybe a long way, and from the first to the second, much shorter.
Shorter.
And the second, and so after a while, it can become a habit. And this is karma. This is how we can understand karma in daily life, that we create habits through our volitional actions. Whatever we think about, we enjoy thinking about, these condition our internal life. So, so if you're thinking a lot about gambling or drinking, then maybe you fly to Bangkok and you're looking down on Bangkok and you say, oh, so many good places to drink, so many good places to gamble.
Yeah.
But if you are a Buddhist and you're thinking, oh, coming to Bangkok, so many temples.
Temples.
You
yeah.
see, so what are the thoughts that come up naturally in your mind? Why do they come up? They come up because you thought about them in the past.
Yes.
So this is the result of, this is old karma. You know, so karma is incredibly complex. And one analogy would be of a river. Let's say on a river, and there are various houses and factories on either side of the river. Let's say a factory on this side of the river releases some effluent
Yes.
into the river, and it is acid. So what will be the effect on the stream of the river? You can say
Polluted.
the water will become more acidic,
Yes.
or the pH level will drop. But not always, because maybe there is another factory further upstream which are releasing alkaline effluent.
Oh, yes. Yes.
So there is an effect, but it may not be visible. So if the amount of alkaline being released into the water is of a really large amount, and the acid is quite a small amount or weak amount, then the the reduction of pH level will be very small.
Very small.
But there will be an effect.
Yes.
So this is carrying on over countless lifetimes. You cannot understand karma through just looking at your personal experience in one life. You can understand some aspects of it. Now, I think one of the reasons, or many Buddhists are, particularly in India, perhaps, are very unsure about law of karma and have some
Yes.
doubts about it.
Yes.
And I think it's more that people are worried about the interpretation of
Yes.
karma in other religions,
Yes.
or the manipulation of those teachings for certain benefits for those people. But I think that if you look at the Buddhist teaching of karma, it's maybe not the same thing that you think it is. So for Buddhists, we say that the old karma that you receive in your life is your raw material. But what is important is the new karma that you make. So let's say you have two people who are born in a similar situation, and one person just says, oh, life is so bad, I can't do anything, and just give up. And another person said, I've got to do the best I can with what I have right now and just make the best of my life that I can.
Yes.
So that you could say the old karma for two people are the same, but the new karma is different.
Yes.
Yeah. So karma is not fate. It's opportunity. It's raw material. This is the old karma, which is received from the past life.
Yeah. Venerable, going ahead, actually, it's a related question to karma. I feel that. Omraj from Nagpur is asking how to get rid of addiction. I think.
first of all, it's important to do the work of reflection and to examine what is it that you feel you get from your addiction. Because the addiction is answering some psychological need. Of course, some drugs, after a while, then they create the physical need. But if we put the physical need aside and the psychological need. So if you are trying to get rid of an addiction, but you don't understand the psychological need which it is satisfying to one degree or another, that same psychological need would lead you into another kind of addiction. So you have to look very, very closely at this. The other thing is that you have to have an alternative to it. And this is why meditation is so important. And I've seen in many cases that meditation programs, meditation camps have been surprisingly effective in reducing, eliminating addictive behavior. Now, we all know that we all hear from when we are kids that true happiness lies within. Every religion will teach this.
Yes.
Okay. But surprisingly, very few people, even though they want to lead a happy life, they're looking within for this kind of happiness. And if they do, it's not in any kind of systematic manner. But if we develop the meditation practice and reach a level of the mind becomes calm and clear and stable, what we call samadhi, stability of mind, the natural effect or natural expression of stable, purified mind is very deep happiness and contentment and bliss. So one of if we look at addictive behavior, we can see that there's not strong correlation with lack of education. That is to say, many highly educated people are also addicted to various kinds of drugs. And we all know doctors who smoke, for instance, and people who are very successful but addicted to cocaine or some of these other kinds of drugs. So it's not an intelligence problem or not an IQ problem. But if you were to ask such a person, do you not see that this source of happiness in your life is not a good one? It's damaging you physically, it's damaging your relationships with other people, it's destroying your self-respect, it's giving you no true peace of mind. And I think that in many cases people will say, yes, I can see this. Oh, why can you not give it up? And the answer is always come down to my view is something is better than nothing. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, this is a very unsatisfactory source of happiness, but it's better than no happiness at all. So this is the fear that if you let go of the addiction, you won't have anything left. It becomes an identity and your main source of pleasure and happiness in life. So if you develop the meditation, now you have the alternative source of happiness. And you know for a fact, even if you don't smoke this or take this or whatever, you have this inner happiness. There's your refuge. And this is why meditation can have a really very powerful effect on addictive behavior.
Thank you, Venerable. Although I am a doctor, I don't think I could analyze in this way. Thank you so much, Ajahn. Just one thought you told about mindfulness and meditation and addiction. One thought came into my mind, and please allow me to ask one question, that how this mindfulness also helps during our administration.
Well, again, if we drew up a list of the causes of problems in our daily life and in a working life, and whether these are due to carelessness or stress. And these two obviously are related. When people stress, they tend to be more careless, or to some personality conflicts with the people around them, overconfidence, lack of confidence, depression, anxiety, impatience. So many of these mental states have tangible effects on productivity and measurable indexes of business behavior and business conduct and success. So it's only with looking at these mental states themselves and learning how to manage them and how to deal with them that you come to any real conclusion or any real success, other than some stopgap measures. And so mindfulness is the means by which we become more in touch with what's going on in our body and mind. But the key factor of mindfulness is we're not mindful of, oh, I'm so depressed today, or I'm so anxious, or I'm so stressed. But we're seeing, oh, there is stress in the mind. There is anxiety in the mind. There is impatience in the mind. So we're beginning to see mental states as events, as impersonal phenomena that come into our mind and then go out. And my teacher, he had a nice, a good simile for this. He said, imagine a room with many open doors and windows, and you're sitting in the chair in the middle of the room. There's only one chair.
Okay.
I said, anybody who comes in, they don't stay for very long because there's nowhere to sit down. But the moment you get out of your chair, then people are going to come and sit down. Maybe it's difficult to get rid of them. So sitting in the chair in the middle of the room is like establishing mindfulness and awareness. So that when there are these negative mental states, there's nowhere for them to sit down. They don't last very long. Okay.
Thank you, Venerable. Venerable, there is this Kabir Bodhi. He says that if everything is decided in our life, if everything is decided, then what is the importance of moral practicing? And he has given a reference of Pratitya Samutpada.
Well, the problem with this question is the first sentence. If everything is decided, well, that's the whole point. It's not decided, and that's the reason why Buddhist practice is meaningful. And if everything was decided, there could be no Eightfold Path.
Yes.
But to return to the topic of mindfulness, because this is also relevant here, one of the important sayings is that if you have mindfulness, you have many choices, and without mindfulness, you have few or no choices. What that means is we tend to just be carried along by the stream of events and follow the line of least resistance. So much of our life is on automatic pilot because there's just too much to digest and too much to deal with. But that means that in that case, then things are rather fixed. We become like puppets. So somebody praises you and you feel very happy, and somebody criticizes you and you feel that. So you go up and down according to what other people are doing and what's going on in your life. So you could say this is a kind of fixed thing. But if you have mindfulness, then you have a choice. Someone praises you. You don't have to feel happy. You could say, that's praise. Someone's praised me. That's just a normal part of life. You do something good, somebody praises you. But you don't get carried away by it. Or somebody criticizes you. And you say, that's a fair criticism. Or there's some parts of that are true, some that are not. You can discriminate, and you can learn lessons from criticism, without your feelings being hurt or offended or angry. So now the external stream of events taking place, but you are more and more independent of them.
Yeah.
So you are less conditioned. You are more free. So mindfulness is giving you more freedom. Without mindfulness, even though you may say, oh, I'm a free person, I'm a self-made man, I'm this, but actually you are very much conditioned by your surroundings.
So what he has said is that asked was that everything is pre-decided. It is not that.
No, of course not. No, how could it be?
Yes. Another Amay is asking, how do we convert meditation into compassion?
That's not a very well, excuse me, it's not a very well phrased
Question.
in that, I mean, the development of compassion is in itself one of the chief meditation practices. So it's not that how do you relate these two things? I mean, one is a subset of the other.
Yes.
But the Buddhist position here is that wisdom and compassion are almost inseparable, we can say. And if we look at the life of the Buddha was enlightened through
Yes.
wisdom. But after he had enjoyed the bliss of enlightenment for some days or some weeks, then compassion arose. How can I help other beings to find freedom from suffering? And so out of that compassion, he walked to Sarna, and then he taught the Four Noble Truths using his wisdom. So the compassion led him to teach, but the actual teaching itself and the formulation of Four Noble Truths, this is his wisdom. So if we look at the life of the Buddha or any Arahant, you always see these two things going together, the compassion and the wisdom. So, and we can say this is a test. If it's true wisdom, it will be accompanied by compassion. If it's true, mature compassion, it will be accompanied by wisdom.
Wisdom. Yeah. Bante, Ajahn, you mentioned about arhats. There is one question that whether arhats exist today.
Yeah, so of course, there's no way that we can prove this. If you were to ask, my personal belief and conviction is yes, and I have the personal, I have the belief that I've met a number of arahants during my life, and had the good fortune to bow to them and to listen to teachings from them. But I would like to tell you my feeling that arose when I first met my teacher, who I believe was Arahant. So I cannot prove this to anyone, and I don't have any, there's no test for it, okay? But my feeling when I met him, I can only express it's like, as if you live in a world of plastic flowers. You only, in your life, you only ever saw a plastic flower, artificial flower. And then one day, someone gives you a fresh flower and you say, oh, this is what a flower is supposed to be, you know? So I felt it's like, oh, this is what a human being can be. This is what a human being should be. It's like this. It's like a fresh flower rather than plastic flower. Or the other example I gave is, if you lived in a world where everyone sang off key, nobody can sing with a good pitch or on key.
Yeah.
Okay. And then someday you heard someone who sings like your daughter-in-law, and you say, oh, that's what it's supposed to sound like.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So this analogy with him, it's not like he's so special and he's so holy, really down to earth, but just this feeling that he's normal and we're all abnormal. You know, this is the feeling I have. Okay.
Thank you, Venerable. Venerable, just like Upasakas, lay devotees are watching this show, watching this, your Dhamma talk, there are some monks, venerables are also watching this Dhamma talk. We have one question from Bhikkhu Metanan. He is saying, if our present suffering is the result of bad karma from a prior life, what is the present remedy for ending this suffering in this life?
No, I would disagree with that presentation of Buddhist teaching, in that the past karma is providing, can be a source of pain or difficulty, but the pain and difficulty is not suffering. And we have the opportunity to cultivate ourselves with the Eightfold Path in such a way that we can face up to difficulties in life without suffering. And this is the value of the Eightfold Path. So, as I mentioned just now, the old karma from previous lives, whatever it might be, it is now, it's the raw material you have to work with right now. It's like this, you know, it's not like anybody else. This is what you've got, you know. But you can either make things worse by reacting to the old karma with greed and hatred and delusion, and then you make new karma which strengthens the bad old karma, or you can respond with mindfulness and wisdom and compassion, and this new karma can reduce the effects of the old karma.
Old karma.
And lead to on the path to liberation.
So that is a venerable, real, present remedy for suffering in this life.
Sorry?
The question, what is asked is, what you told is the real, present remedy for suffering in this life. Noble following up.
Yes, so suffering is something that you create. It's not something that happens to you. It's something that you create for yourself.
Yourself, yes.
And so you're learning how not to do that anymore.
Yeah. But Ajahn, there is always this talk about Dhamma, talks about ending of the sufferings. And then in our daily life, we are also professionals, doctors. Some of them are entrepreneurs and into businesses also. So how this Dhamma and business, because Dhamma talks about end of sufferings. In businesses, there are few things which may go against Dhamma. So that is how it is perceived. So how is it a correlation between Dhamma and business that we do in daily life?
Okay, well, first of all, just to comment upon this idea that Dhamma practice is for the end of suffering. Okay, so suffering, we should always remind ourselves, is a very unsatisfactory translation of the word dukkha.
Dukkha, yeah.
And sometimes it's better to use dukkha than suffering, just to remind ourselves. One way of translating dukkha is a lack of true happiness. Okay? It's the lack of true happiness. And the Buddha says, Nibbānang paramang sukhang. Nibbana is the supreme happiness.
Yes.
So it's not nothing, it's the supreme happiness. So when we say we're unenlightened, we say we lack the supreme happiness. So we're not saying you don't have any happiness in your life, everything is suffering and miserable. Well, no, it's not. We have many things in life. The joys of family life are, the Buddha did not deride those or overlook them. But these small happinesses we have in life, we can take pride in, but they still do not answer the deep need for Dhamma in our hearts, the deep need for enlightenment that we have in our hearts, or for liberation. So ultimately we can say unsatisfactory. But even jhana, if you have jhana in absolute bliss, and this is still dukkha, because it's still a conditioned phenomena. It's not stable. and it's not the ultimate happiness. So this is just to comment on that sometimes the words we use, our translations and understanding can make things, distort things somewhat. So I would say in business, that at the end of the day, we are first of all human beings before we are businessmen or businesswomen.
Yes.
And we have a responsibility to our humanity and, before business. So these days in a more secular society and people drifting away from religion, many people, educated people, make their careers like their religion, and people boast, oh, I get to work. I'm the first one at the work in the morning and I'm the last one home at night. Maybe it's 10 o'clock, as if this is a good thing, it's worthy of praise. And I feel sorry for someone like that.
Yeah.
So, but sometimes you have no choice, but it's not like, my life has meaning because I work so many hours. I think that's a wrong way of thinking about it. I would say that in business life, and of course I'm not a businessman, so excuse me, all you businessmen out there. I say, what does he know about business? He's a monk living in the forest. But I do know, many business people, and I do try to learn from them and their experience. And I would say in Dhamma practice, on the level of ethics and morality, then often it's felt these things are incompatible. And we met a gentleman yesterday who said, in a business world, you have to lie.
Yes.
And I said to him, well, have you ever tried, even for a short period, as a scientific experiment, to see whether you could survive without lying? Yeah, and I think he would be surprised. But my observation is that people who are very unscrupulous and will do anything to be successful in business life. Firstly, they can often make profit in a short term.
Yes.
But it's not sustainable, because to create sustainable business relationships, you need trust. And if you're selfish and you take advantage of others and you're dishonest, there's no trust and people don't want to work with you, don't want to hire you. So you may think that being dishonest or bending the rules a bit or lying or so on is smart, but it's smart short term maybe, but not long term. And in companies where the management or the CEO are not so honest, then it has a detrimental effect on the workforce. Because one, you see certain people who take that as an example and they will emulate that and they will be dishonest and corrupt in their positions. And when that happens, the good people that you want to keep in your company, they feel discouraged.
Yes.
They want to work hard. They want to, but they just feel I'm surrounded by people and situation which just makes me feel bad. So what happens is your good people start leaving, and your reputation for a company which is not so honest but cuts the corners, the kind of people who want to work with you are the people you don't want. So in the long term, the quality of your workforce, the inspiration or the dedication to the company rather than to personal welfare, all these things go downhill. And so in the end, you may even end up bankrupt. And we see so many companies of this kind going bankrupt in America. It's huge companies. But if you have an honest and where the boss and the CEO really care for their workers and their welfare, and in Thailand, I was so happy and proud of many people I know during COVID who really took personal. They took almost no money out of their companies. They did everything they could to keep
their workers on and not to make them unemployed. And and that's beautiful to see, but it means that the people become really identified with your company, and they will make sacrifices for you. And to what extent you can create this true sense of community and family in companies, I think this is really, really wonderful, both in terms of quality of life for everyone who's working, but also it just has a good effect on the productivity of the company as well.
Yeah. Thank you, Ajahn. Yeah. So, Dhamma and business, that can go together. And Ajahn mentioned about how some business persons from Thailand, they helped during COVID. Here, I would like to also tell you about the kindness of Venerable Ajahn Jayasaro, that during COVID period, when he saw that suffering in India from COVID situation, so he requested for the donation from the business persons and lay devotees of Thailand, and they donated 32 ambulances throughout India to different organizations, hospitals, even monasteries. That is a great work which because of Ajahn told others to help us. So that is one kind
If I may correct you, I think you're giving me too much credit here, because actually I didn't make any request at all. I just said that I wanted to do something to help.
Yeah.
And then people just told their friends who told their friends. And in Thailand, so many people have been to the holy places.
Yes.
And they feel this link and want to do something for India, but what can you do usually? And the value of having a monk as a figurehead is that people can trust. You see,
Trust, yes.
And they
Yes.
know that their money will be used
Yes.
in the manner that they intend. And so I was more like a figurehead, really. I didn't really do anything. But the person who
So
did do
kindness.
a lot is you.
Oh, no,
Yes,
Venerable.
because you did all the hard work with the liaising and negotiating with Tata company. And so this ambulance project was the result of hard work and dedication of so many people, mostly in Thailand, but also here in India. So
Thank you. I was so blessed to be part of that noble project, Venerable. Thank you so much. We are now ending towards the end of the session. We talked about Dhamma and businesses. Venerable, youths of India, basically, they always have this question in their mind, whether Dhamma really helps in their career growth.
again, this is difficult question to answer. If you're working in a very corrupt environment,
Yes.
yes, it may be the case that if you're very honest, then you're going to have obstacles from the corrupt people around you and above you. But nevertheless, there are people who are successful in corrupt organizations
Yes.
through practice of Dhamma. And I know a number of people like this, and I thought just how much merit you make, not just for yourself, and that you can look yourself in the mirror every day, and that when your kids and grandkids ask you about your career, you don't have to lie to them. You can tell them with genuine sense of achievement. That's a wonderful thing to begin with. But you only need one person who is successful without compromising on their principles. And all the young people are coming in, and everyone's around and said, look, in the world today, you can't do, you have to make some compromise.
Compromise.
And it's, the tendency is you believe that, but you only need one person. Well, what about him? He's done it.
Yes.
So can I. So this is, you may think I'm just one person, going against the stream, but actually you're an inspiration to many people of the younger generation. And so this is why it's worthwhile. But I think that as you're a young person in your 20s, maybe it's really tough. But if you hold on to your principles, you get a bit older, you get more senior, you get more responsibility and more power. You're not only the feather in the wind. Now you have the chance to establish principles and to be able to reform your business or your company and to lead it on a better way. And I think that's a really good goal for someone in the business world or in public life in any sphere.
Thank you, Venerable. Venerable, one last question, which is normally asked by women of Buddhist community here and other women also from other communities, that in India, culturally also, women, they are supposed to look after the households. So most of their time goes in running of the household. So can they still do more kushal kamma so that they are elevated in their life?
Well, it's work, isn't it? I mean, most women in a day, they work much harder than their husbands in the
Yes,
office.
yes.
So that's whether you're working at home or you're working in the office. It's a matter of practicing the Dhamma, and the environment is not really a factor here. In fact, if you're at home, you can practice mindfulness and be chanting while you're working, or you can you can find some short periods of time just to sit and meditate because you're at home, or you couldn't do that in a big busy place. I think you can say in some cases women have an advantage, that it's really your dedication and your faith and your effort that decide this, not whether you're a man or a woman.
Yeah. Thank you, Venerable. I think it is more than 1 hour now. We had these wise words coming from Ajahn Jayasaro. As I mentioned, he is a most respected monk from the forest tradition of Ajahn Chah tradition of Thailand. And it's very difficult to get his time, but we are so fortunate Ajahn is there in Mumbai tomorrow. So Ajahn, while ending this session, do you have anything to say for the blessings of all upasakas, lay devotees who are watching this? Do you have any advice for all of us, please?
Yes, the Dhamma is an education. The Eightfold Path is a training. It's an education that everyone can apply and realize the fruits of. And that we become Buddhists not through belief in the teaching, but in applying the teaching and to improving the quality of our life and improving the quality of our relationship with our family and the people at work, and creating the kind of communities and the kind of country that we all want to live in. So I would share with you the words of my teacher as when you feel enthusiastic, then you practice. When you feel lazy and discouraged, then you practice. Whatever the situation, you just keep practicing. Be patient. It takes a long time. It's not an easy thing. But it is, in the end, nobody who's put the time into this practice has ever regretted it. They've only said, thank goodness I had the opportunity to study and practice the Buddhist teachings in this life.
Thank you, Venerable. So this is the end of our very, very good, nice and wise words that we heard from Ajahn Jayasaro. I think one question, on every question he elaborated so much, maybe there could be one book out of the answers which we got to hear from Ajahn Jayasaro. I hope this session was very useful to all of us. I especially thank Awaz India TV for this live Dhamma talk of Venerable Ajahn Jayasaro. And of course, my gratitude and my heartfelt thanks to Ajahn Jayasaro, who took out so much of time for well-being of all of us. Thank you once again, Ajahn. Thank you so much. I'm so blessed to be part of this, which I never believed that this was going to be this way. It was. I feel really blessed and honored for this chance given to me by Ajahn to put these questions of lay devotees to you. Thank you, Ajahn. Thank you so much.